The rising sun cast a golden hue over Tokyo. Skyscrapers pierced the sky, a testament to Japan's modern architecture.
David, look at this place. It's like nothing I've ever seen before.
I know, right? The blend of tradition and modernity here is just captivating.
They stopped to admire women in elegant kimonos, a testament to the city's rich history. Tokyo was a feast for the senses, a city that never sleeps. Their trip was a combination of business and pleasure.
This place is perfect, David. I can already feel the inspiration flowing.
And I can't wait to unwind here after the conferences. It's just what we need.
They had met at a friend's art exhibition 2 years ago, drawn together by their shared love for travel and adventure.
Remember the night we met? I knew right then we'd have so many adventures together.
And here we are making another beautiful memory.
Days melted into a blur of vibrant experiences.
Look at their outfits, David. They're so creative and bold.
You're getting better with those chopsticks, Sarah.
Ha! Thanks to your patient teaching.
They explored local restaurants, delighting in the delicate flavors of sushi and ramen. One afternoon found them wandering through the serene Meiji Shrine, a tranquil oasis amidst the urban chaos. Despite the language barrier, they found ways to communicate.
It's amazing how much you can say without words.
Yeah, and the locals are so kind and patient with us.
Back at the townhouse, Sarah would recount her observations in her notebook.
You're always so focused when you write. It's one of the things I love about you.
And I love how you always find time to look at me, even when you're busy.
It was on that same night as they prepared for bed that Sarah first noticed it.
Did you feel that?
A chill, as though a cold breeze had swept through the room despite the windows being firmly shut. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the paper walls of the townhouse, chasing away the shadows of the night.
The aroma of incense from the Sensoji temple filled the air, a comforting contrast to the previous night's unsettling scent.
Yet, even as they strolled hand in hand through the bustling market, a sense of unease lingered at the edge of Sarah's awareness. Back at the townhouse, as dusk settled over the city, the shadows returned.
Just the house settling.
But then a whisper, soft and indistinct, seemed to drift from the corner of the room. It was a child's voice, high-pitched and filled with the sorrow that sent chills down her spine.
Did you say something, love?
No, just focusing on my work.
Later that evening, as they prepared for bed, Sarah noticed something she hadn't seen before.
Where did this come from?
I haven't seen that before. Maybe the previous tenants left it behind.
The toy felt wrong, out of place in the otherwise meticulously clean and minimalist townhouse.
It's a small wooden katana.
It was as if it had materialized from thin air, a tangible manifestation of the growing sense of dread that had settled over them. That night, sleep evaded Sarah.
The wooden katana lay on the low table, its shadow a menacing silhouette in the moonlight filtering through the paper walls.
Every creak of the old house, every rustle of wind through the bamboo outside their window, sent a jolt of fear through Sarah's body.
The whisper, filled with an unearthly sorrow, echoed in her ears.
A cold spot, distinctly different from the natural coolness of the night air, settled over the bed.
She felt a presence in the room watching them, its intent unknown but undeniably malevolent.
Hours crawled by, each one an eternity.
Morning, love. You're up early.
Couldn't sleep.
David, still half asleep, didn't notice the tremor in her words.
She, the pragmatic one, the skeptic, was unraveling, and the thought terrified her more than any ghostly presence.
The digital clock on the bedside table mocked her with its glowing numbers, a constant reminder of her inability to escape the growing terror.
Over breakfast, I tried to dismiss the events of the night as a bad dream, a trick of the mind fueled by jet lag and the unfamiliar surroundings.
How about a day trip to Hakone? It's a scenic mountain resort town known for its hot springs and stunning views of Mount Fuji.
Sarah, desperate to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the townhouse, readily agreed. But even as they boarded the bullet train, a sense of unease clung to her, a persistent shadow in the bright sunshine. The day trip to Hakone provided a temporary respite.
Look at that view, Sarah. It's incredible, isn't it? And the hot springs are just what we needed.
They strolled hand in hand through the quaint streets of Hakone, browsing the local crafts shops, their laughter echoing through the crisp mountain air.
For a moment, I felt at peace.
But as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the picturesque landscape, I felt a familiar unease creep back into my heart. The train journey back to Tokyo seemed to stretch on forever, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels against the tracks, a relentless reminder of the darkness that awaited them. Back in the confines of the townhouse, the oppressive atmosphere returned with a vengeance. The air felt thick and heavy, as if the very walls were closing in on them. Sleep was impossible. I imagined I could feel the cold spot again, a chilling presence hovering just beyond the reach of my touch. Driven by a desperate need to understand, Sarah found herself drawn to the internet. The search yielded a chilling trail of local legends and whispered rumors.
One article, buried deep within the online archives of a local newspaper, caught her attention. It detailed the unsolved case of a young boy who had disappeared from the very street where they were staying, his body never found.
The details were scant, the writing faded with time, but one chilling phrase leaped out at Emily. The boy, it was said, was last seen playing with a wooden katana, a gift from his late grandfather.
Sarah's blood ran cold. She reread the article, each word a hammer blow to her already frayed nerves. The missing boy, the wooden katana, the whispers, the shadows. It all coalesced into a horrifying realization.
They were not alone in the townhouse. They were sharing their space with a restless spirit, a child forever trapped in the moment of his disappearance.
Fear, sharp and cold, gripped Sarah's heart. She had to tell David, to make him understand the danger they were in.
But as she turned to wake him, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the bedside lamp and plunging them into darkness.
A blood-curdling scream, filled with an anguish that seemed to echo through the ages, pierced the silence. It was coming from the hallway, just outside their bedroom door.
Panic seized Sarah. She scrambled back on the tatami mat floor, her heart pounding against her ribs like a frantic bird.
The boy from the article.
The scream, filled with an unearthly sorrow, seemed to reverberate through the very foundations of the house. It was a child's scream filled with a terror and pain that transcended language and time. David, jolted awake, sat up in bed, his eyes struggling to adjust to the sudden darkness.
Sarah, what was that? What's wrong?
His voice, normally a source of comfort, was thin and strained with fear.
The boy from the article.
She pointed towards her laptop, its screen now blank, a chilling reminder of the tragic story she had uncovered. She knew with a certainty that defied logic that the scream belonged to the missing child, his anguish echoing through the years. The air grew heavy, the temperature plummeting as a wave of icy dread washed over them. The scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood, filled their nostrils, sending a wave of nausea through Sarah. The presence, which had always felt distant, lurking at the edges of their awareness, was now undeniably close, its sorrow palpable, suffocating. Suddenly the scream was replaced by a low, guttural growl, filled with a rage that chilled them to the bone. The growl seemed to emanate from the very walls of the house, vibrating through the floorboards beneath them. Sarah huddled against David, burying her face in his chest, seeking solace in his warmth. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the growling ceased. A heavy silence descended upon the room, even more unsettling than the terrifying sounds that had preceded it. It was the silence of anticipation, of a predator toying with its prey. Sarah could feel her own pulse throbbing in her ears, each beat an agonizing tick of a clock winding down to an unknown fate. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she noticed a faint, bluish glow emanating from the hallway. The glow pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, growing in intensity until it illuminated the doorway. Sarah held her breath, her eyes fixed on the doorway, her mind struggling to comprehend the scene unfolding before her. She knew, with a sinking certainty, that they were about to come face to face with the source of the haunting. A figure began to solidify in the pulsing blue light. Small, childlike, it flickered like a projection on a damaged film reel. As it moved closer, details sharpened. A boy no older than 6, his face pale and gaunt, his eyes 2 bottomless pits of sadness. He wore a blue kimono, faded and torn, the fabric stained with what looked disturbingly like dried blood. The boy's gaze fell upon the wooden katana lying on the low table. His translucent hand, almost too faint to see, stretched out towards it, his spectral fingers brushing against the worn wood. A low moan escaped his lips, a sound filled with an unbearable longing and a chilling rage.
He wants us to know,
Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse with terror. She understood with a clarity born of fear and desperation that the boy's spirit was tethered to the physical world by his unfinished business, his need for vengeance. He sought to communicate his suffering, to make them understand the depth of his pain. David, his arm wrapped protectively around Sarah, stared at the spectral figure, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He had always prided himself on his rationality, his ability to explain away the unexplainable, but the sheer raw grief emanating from the ghostly child defied all logic, all reason. It was a force of nature, powerful and unrelenting. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the paper walls, casting long ethereal shadows across the room, the boy's form began to fade. The blue glow flickered, dimmed, and finally vanished, leaving behind a chilling emptiness. Sarah and David, still trembling from the encounter, remained huddled together on the floor, their bodies stiff with exhaustion and lingering fear. In the cold, harsh light of the new day, they made a pact. They would uncover the truth of the boy's death, bring his story to light, and perhaps, just perhaps, offer his restless spirit a measure of peace. They left the townhouse that very day, their belongings packed in haste, their minds filled with the chilling memory of the boy in the blue kimono. As they hailed a taxi, Sarah cast one last glance at the unassuming building, its facade now bathed in the warm glow of the rising sun.